What up, world? It's your boy Mo Better from Mo Better Publishing Productions LLC, the media group. I deserve a deal in connection with Collective Minds LLC. This one is probably going to make a lot of people upset, especially during the day of the holiday. But I want to ask you, like, is Christmas actually supported by the Bible? Now, this is to those who claim to be Christian, those who claim to be Catholic, whatever it is you are, Baptist, Episcopalian, whatever it is, as long as you believe in the Bible, I'm going to ask you, is it supported? And this all created and started with, I want you to understand that the devil, when it's created, what he did was create situations of division. And he creates division by situations of doubt and miseducation and misinformation. And a lot of people will say, well, like when he told Eve, you would die when you eat from this. The day you die from it, you surely will not die. Now I want you to think about something. It says that the Most High, a day with him is like 1,000 years to us. So Adam died at 900 something years old. So before the day, even in the figurative sense, ended, he did die. You see what I'm saying? So you see the trickery? We can really go through some trickery right here and show you what it began. And it began then. Genesis 3:15, the New International Version says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Now, what she is talking about, what the Most High is talking about with this, is that way back then, this was the prophecy that he was going to repair the damage that was done through Adam and Eve doing what it is that they did. So with this woman, she will give birth to the Messiah, who would take back, because through one man's sin into the world, about one man's sin was taken out. So this is the situation here. And a crushing blow of the heel was what the devil did to the Messiah. He killed him, but he was resurrected after 3 days. So that was a slight blow. However, it says that that offspring will come back and eventually give a crushing head blow to the serpent, which was the devil. And the thing is, he's going to be completely extinguished and done away with. So this is where this all began. And by him saying this, he knows that through Revelations, he says the devil has a short period of time. He's angry. Why? Because he knows he's going to go. So he's on a kamikaze mission. I want to take as many people as I possibly can with me. That's what I'm going to do. So in the process, he creates these lies and deceptions for us not to pay attention what we really need to pay attention to. So let's go to Matthew. We're going to read chapter 2, verses 1 through 18, this New International Version. So you can look everything up as I'm saying. Let's look at this when Jesus was born. It said, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judah, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Now, look at that. They said they saw a star and they actually came to worship Jesus. Jesus never said to worship me, and he actually stopped some people from doing that. And again, you have the Magi here. Let's pay attention to the Magi. It said, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem of Judah, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. Now, I want you to understand something, that this star that was there, it led them first to King Herod. Now, you pay attention to this. It said, and it quotes, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people of Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him. Now, this is what King Herod said. Now, look at this, is the star. This not a star. This is a figure in the sky just like the devil appeared to Eve as a serpent, he appeared to the Magi as a star. And said, after they heard the king, they went to their way. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, not a manger. Now remember, if we as a people today, how long would it take for you to walk to Texas? How long would it take you to fly to Texas? Now reverse that and say, how long would it take you to walk to Texas? So back then they didn't have planes, they didn't have automobiles, they were walking. So Jesus was actually born in a manger, but by the time that the Magi got to Jesus, they were actually in a house. They saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Now I want you to understand that. Look at this. This thing, this image, again, as the serpent did, told Eve a lie. This image led them to Herod first. And when it led them to Herod, what did Herod say? Herod said, hey, let me go, tell me what a child is, so I can go and worship this child too, because I know he's the ruler, right? Now, listen to this, the escape to Egypt. When they had gone, first of all, this image, let me get this back here, right here. It said, and having been warned in a dream by the Most High not to go back to tell Herod where this child was, they returned to their country by another route. These are the Magi. Now, they've been warned. Now, let's see why. The escape to Egypt. When they had gone, and the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, get up, and he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you. For Herod, the one that the star led them to first, said, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. Now, is this a star from God that is leading these Magi to King Herod first? Didn't lead them straight to Jesus. It led them to King Herod first. And King Herod, you know, these are men of money. So I'm going to give y'all some money. Do me a favor. Tell us where he is, and we're going to swap some favors, and I'm going to look out for you. With that happened, they were warned not to do so. It says right now, it says, so he got up and took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. Why? Because Herod looked for the death of that child all his life. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had sought about the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son. This was prophesied. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and his vicinity to where 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was filled. So this star led them, and they said, look, before they even left, they said, listen, the star is leading us such and such place. So this is where it has to be. But when they got there, and the Most High told them in a dream, man, you better not go tell a dude nothing, or the sorcery that you have seen and witnessed and performed and act in has nothing to do compared to what I'm going to do to you if you go back and tell him where my son is. To me, that's what the vision said. This is what it says. Voices heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because there are no more. What that means is at this time when Herod, they didn't go back to tell Herod where it was, but they told him the vicinity before they left. So when they got there, King Herod went there and killed every child from the ages of 2 on down, which substantiates again that guess what? Jesus, unlike they say in the churches, which is a lie, was not in the manger when they got there. He was in a house. Now let's look at this. Who are the Magi? Anyone in the encyclopedia is 1200. It said skilled magicians, astrologers, from Latin magi, plural of magus, magicians, learned magician, from Greek magos, a word used for the Persian learned and priestly class as portrayed in the Bible, said by ancient historians to have been originally the name of the Median tribe, from Old Persian magus, magician. And this is from the encyclopedia. You can look it up. Word encyclopedia and look it up. Now, when you look at this and you find out who they were, let's ask, were they sent by God? Now, let's go to Deuteronomy 18, Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 through 14. This is New International Version. Let's see what it says. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is a detestable thing to the Lord, because these same detestable practices the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. So was this, again, look at it, was this star that appeared from God that led them to King Herod? Actually, that led some people that God don't even approve of to King Herod first, who was looking for him to kill him. And then went somewhere, and again, that led them somewhere. Now I want you to look at stars don't move. Constellations don't move. It says that when you look in Genesis, it says the constellations were made to tell the difference between times and seasons and directions. So if a star moves, can it direct you? They burn out. They and they're birthed, but they don't go back and forth to places. You see what I'm saying? Look at this. The prophet. The nations you will dispossess. Listen to those who practice the nations you will dispossess. Listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. So these were actually, when you call Magi, they have changed this into wise men. It was wise because they practiced magic and sorcery. They knew a whole lot of things and ways to manipulate people. But again, this is not something that was initiated by the Most High God, especially not pertaining to his son. So what let them know that Jesus was born and led them to him? Stars do not move unless they are burning out or being formed and birthed from nebulas. This star, however, led them, stayed where they were, and then led them somewhere else. Where did it lead them to first? Is that something that God would do? So this could not have been a real star. It was not made from God. And it's not really a Davidic line who was a great ancestor of the one this star was trying to lead assassins to his great-great-great-grandson and the Messiah. Think about that. Now I ask you, when you think about this star, we call it the Star of David, and it's all on top of the Christmas tree. Should this be on top of your tree? Let's look at this. Let's look at trees. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, and here it is. This is, hear the word which the Lord speaks to you, O house of Israel. This says the Lord, do not learn the way of the heathen. Do you hear that? Do not learn the way of the heathen. Now let's see what the heathen does. Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them. For the customs of the peoples are futile. For one cuts a tree from the forest, the works of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten with nails and hammers so that it will not topple. They are upright like a palm tree, and they cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot go by themselves. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor can they do any good. Now, when you look at this tree and you hear what's this, it don't go out and cut it down and adorn it with gold and silver and things of that nature. Put the star up there and things that we do, or our angel up there, whatever you do, we do. Now, why is this? Let's look at this. And now when you look at the trees, like the Persians and the Syrians were some of the most crucial and cruel people that ever existed. Many countries of old during biblical times, when they captured your country, would put the kings on top of the tree in front of his castle, the head of the king. And throughout that tree was family members and heads of the conquered king's country, and the bottom was like the governors and things of that nature was throughout the tree with the silver and his gold and the king's head at the top. And on the bottom was the children, which meant that the genealogical line was destroyed completely and no enemies could come back and repay for vengeance. Think of the movie 300. Remember, one of the things that was like so detrimental to them was like, they was like, oh my God, who would do this? They walked and they saw a tree and people all over trees. So again, this is historical. This is not just me talking and saying something. Okay? Some have said that this was talking about in this chapter in the Bible, Genesis chapter 10, 1 through 5. Some say that this was talking about making idols. But the trickery of the matter that many miss is, remember, Satan uses trickery and discouragement and manipulates of speech and words, right? He manipulated Eve. You will surely not die this day in this 24-hour period, but within that 1,000-year day, as with the Most High, guess what? Adam and Eve died. So you will be believing that you're doing something that's not an issue, but guess what? It is. It's going to take place. So again, I say, of that matter that many miss is Xmas really Xmas? Is Christmas really Christmas without a tree? So in that matter, and throughout trickery, it is an idol with a demonic object on the top that we thought was a Star of David sent by God. Interesting. This is we say, oh, well, I don't look at it like that. I do it for the good. This is for the good thing. Can this be done, though? Can you take something that God said is bad and make it good? Can you do that? This is what the Most High, he said, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other gods before me, period. You see what I'm saying? So let's look at something right quick. Let's look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. It says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourselves an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above, on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. The first king of Israel was Saul. He was dismissed as king due to this. And do you remember the golden calf? It was made from pure gold. What happened to it? This was not only an act which depicted abhorrence of this idol, but which made it impossible to repeat the worship of this particular idol ever again. Guess what happened to even gold that is made like this? Gifts, trees, anything that we think is good. This is what God does. He said, the idol was burned, then crushed and ground into fine powder, gold dust, and then poured out on the surface of the water, the brook that came down from the mountain. You can look this up in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 21, from which the Israelites were forced to drink. There would be a real irony here if the Israelites had been drinking to their God, for Moses made them drink their God. So who can make a clean thing from an unclean thing, as spoken by Job? It is impossible. Now, let's go to another figure. Let's create this. We talked about the star. We talked about the tree. We talked about the Magi. You see what I'm saying? Now, what about Satan Claus? Yeah, I said that right. Satan Claus. Again, trickery through the serpent, the trickery with the star, the trickery with the tree. So many different things, right? I'll tell you about the power of this. Go look at Jude 9, and you will see one time in there where Jude is explaining how God, well, the Most High buried and hid. A lot of people say, man, none of these people are alive to do this, and you can't find none of their grave sites. At a period of time you could, but what the Most High does is, like, you will see that the Most High will take your body and put you places because he knows these things, like Jude 9, where it says that Michael had to be called to go to Satan and tell him to leave Moses' body alone. So the Most High had to take that body and do something else with it, just prevent him from doing anything with it, because this is what the devil would do. This is how he plays his hand. You surely will not die. This is the Star of David. You see what I'm saying? Again, so I say Satan Claus. Is he, although a roly-poly man, not through trickery, turned into a god? He lives in a heavenly place you know of, but can't get to, just like God, the North Pole. God has created angelic beings that does all he needs to be done with us and through the universe, correct? Satan Claus has elves, non-human, supernatural as angels. They make cars, boats, guns, toys, and everything else that Satan Claus that needs to be done for those that do good. And just as God places before you the blessing and the malediction and deals with you accordingly, Satan Claus knows when you have been good, knows when you have been bad, knows when you are sleep or awake. So be good for goodness sake. So guess what? He has the right to discipline you just like God. And this is what has been passed down to us for generations, and that we pass off to our children, not the celebration of a holiday, but the misdirection, the miseducation, actually worshiping a false God. Think about it. A lot of people say, I don't want it. It is what it is. Now, let's get to we went through the serpent. We went through the Magi, not supposed to be here. We went through the star that was not sent by God. You know, we're going through these things, right? Through the trees and what the tree represents, and actually symbols to where God said, don't even do that. So why was December 25th chosen? Let's look this up. Hundreds of years after Jesus' death, December 25th was chosen as the date of his birth. Why? Numerous historians believe that the time of the year that became the Christmas season was actually a period when pagan festivities were celebrated. For instance, Encyclopedia Britannica states, one widespread explanation of the origin of the date is that December 25th was the Christianizing of the Dies Solis Invicti Nati, date of the birth of the conquering sun, a popular holiday in the Roman Empire that celebrated the winter solstice as a symbol of the resurgence of the sun, the casting away of winter, and the healing of the rebirth of spring and summer. This is also a time to where they actually will conquer other lands, and you can worship your God. First of all, you can. First three things they take, and when you are conquered, is they take your religion, they take your language, and they take your women. And one of the things that they get to where you will not continuously have an upsurgence in your country, rebellions. What they do is they give you things back slowly. And one of the things they give you back is your God. You can worship your God. You know, people die by their God, whether real, fake, truth, or not. So what they do, this was one of the reasons they gave us Christmas. Well, you can worship your God, but it has to be this way. So that's what happened with that. It says, for instance, Encyclopedia Britannica states, one widespread explanation of the origin of this date is that December 25th was the Christianizing. I went through that. Please forgive me. Let me go next. The Encyclopedia American informs us that the reason for establishing December 25th as Christmas is somewhat obscure. It is usually held that that day was chosen to correspond to pagan festivals that took place around the time of the winter solstice, when days began to lengthen, to celebrate the rebirth of the sun. The Roman Saturnalia, a festivities dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture, and to the renewed power of the sun, also took place at this time. Such festivals usually included licentious behavior by the participants who engaged in unbridled and riotous merrymaking, orgies, rituals, sacrifices, and all types of things. Significantly, that behavior has been characteristic of many Christmas celebrations, even of today. Now, let's do the math according to history. Time of birth, length of his ministry. Jesus evidently was born in the month of Ethanim, that's September, October, of the year 2 BCE. He was baptized about the same of the year of the same time in the year of 29 CE of that time, and died about 3 o'clock or 3 p.m. on Friday, the fourth day of the spring month of Nisan, and it's the first full moon of March or April. Either one of those, that first full moon in that time, that's Nisan 14. He passed at 33 CE. The basis for these dates is as follows. Jesus was born approximately 6 months after the birth of his relative John the Baptizer, during the rule of a Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus, and this was 31 BCE, before Christ, or before Common Era, 14 CE. And the Syrian governorship of Quirinius, see registrations for the prophet dates to Quirinius administration, and toward the close of the reign of Herod the Great over Judea. That's Judea. There's a difference between Judah and Judea. This is Judea. His birth in relations to Herod's death. While the date of Herod's death is a debated one. There is considerable evidence pointing to 1 BC. So Herod, no. Number one, date of his death. Chronological lunar eclipses. A number of events intervened between the time of Jesus' birth and Herod's death. These included Jesus' circumcision on the 8th day. You can look that up in Luke 2, chapter 21. His being brought to the temple in Jerusalem 40 days after birth. You can look that up and see it in Luke 2, chapter 22, 23, then Leviticus chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. The journey of the astrologers from eastern parts to Bethlehem, where Jesus was no longer in a manger, but in a house. You can see that at Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Compare Luke verses 2, 7, 15, and 16. The astrologers had not followed his instructions. Well, goes back. Joseph and Mary's flight to Egypt with the young child. That's in Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 to 15. Followed by Herod realizing that the astrologers had not followed his instructions, and the subsequent slaughter of all boys in Bethlehem and its districts under the age of 2 years, indicating that Jesus was not a newborn infant in a manger as depicted even through churches who know they lying to you. They're dealing with tradition of men and not the law of God. You can find that at Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18. It says, Jesus' birth taking place in the fall of 2 BCE would allow for the time required by these events intervening between his birth and the death of Herod, likely in 1 BCE. There was, however, added reason for placing Jesus' birth in 2 BCE, relationship to John's ministry. To further this basis for the dates given at the start of his section is found in Luke chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, which shows that John the Baptizer began his preaching and baptizing in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. That 15th year ran from the later half of 28 CE to August or September of 29 CE. At some point in Jesus' ministry, Jesus went to him and was baptized. When Jesus thereafter commented on his own ministry, he was about 33 years. He was about 30 years to him and was baptized. When Jesus thereafter commented on his own ministry, he was about 30 years old. At the age of 30, the age at which, look at this is at, and this is also at Luke chapter 3, verses 21 through 26. At the age of 30, the age at which David became king, Jesus would no longer be subject to human parents. You can look this up at 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 4 and 5, and you can compare Luke chapter 2, verse 51. According to Numbers, and a lot of people get in that part and they say, I don't like to read the Bible when you get through Numbers, but when you start looking at Numbers, it talks about the dates and the times of each tribe, the names of them, sons born unto. And if we didn't have this, guess what? We would not have the chronological orders in which we have. We would not have found the Messiah. We'd have not have known who he was, among many, many other things. So according to Numbers chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, chapter 22, chapter 23, chapter 29, and chapter 30, those going into sanctuary service under the law covenant were from 30 years old upward. It is reasonable that John the Baptizer, who was a Levite and a Southern priest, began his ministry at the same age, not at the temple, of course, but in the special assignment God had outlined for him. Look at it in Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 17, chapter 67, chapter 76 through 79. The specific mention twice of the age difference between John and Jesus and the correlation between the appearances and messages of God's angel in announcing the birth of the two sons. Look at Luke verse 1. Give ample basis for believing that their ministries followed a similar timetable, that starts of John's ministry as the forerunner of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, being followed about 6 months later by the commencement of Jesus' ministry. Remember when John was beheaded, they asked him, he said, man, he's the Messiah, right? He said, tell him what he said, go. They asked him, he said, go tell him what I'm doing, when John was in prison, about to be beheaded. On this basis, John's birth occurred 30 years before he began his ministry in Tiberias, 15th year. Hence, somewhere between the later half of 3 BCE and August or September of 2 BCE, with Jesus' birth followed about 6 months later. It was 6 months apart. It continuously talked about that. Because remember when Mary went to go see uh, her cousin, when she walked up pregnant, uh, John the Baptist's mother was pregnant too. And when she walked in, her belly jumped. John jumped because he knew what was going on, even internally. So now do you see the birth, the dates to where he was born in around September, not December anyway. So again, when you look at his death from dying at 33 and a half years old, at the date that he died, and you take that back, even counting the 9 months, it goes to September. It's nowhere near December 25th. And we found out why. Because again, this is a time to where these are festivities for other people. And as the Most High's people were conquered, what happened was people came and began to like, okay, so there will not be a continuous uprising. We will allow you to worship your God, but it has to be this way. And they implemented Christmas in it. And as it grew, it turned into a commercialization of things. We are what we are today. So now this gifts. Let's look at the gifts. We went through the serpent. We went through the star. We went through the Magi. We went through the tree. And we're looking at the dates that none of this correlates. And then we even saw that Jesus was actually close to 2 years old when the Magi got there, not the manger at all. So let's look at this. Now the gifts that brought. So people turn this into something. Let's look at this. The gifts from the three wise men who were actually magicians that God did not approve of allows us through deception of the devil again, deception of the devil, to believe that this is Jesus' birthday and that it should be celebrated. Let's look at this first. This was not only an act which depicted abhorrence of this idol, we looking at this right here, which made it impossible to repeat the worship of this particular idol ever again. The idol was burned, then crushed and ground into fine powder, gold dust, and then poured out on the surface of the water. Again, we looking at what God did, and where he says that you can't make something that I said is abhorrent good, and I'm gonna show you that, right? Now, when we get to this, the Israelites have been drinking of their God, for the Moses made them drink their God. Like this true. Now, I want you to think about that. Well, and I think it was 3,000 or 7,000 men died that day for doing that as well when they made the gold calf, and the Most High tore it up and destroyed it. Right? Now, I want you to go back to these gifts again from these three wise men, and we make it seem as if this is a good thing. And I want to ask you, we going back to the beginning of the patriarchs. Abraham, did he celebrate his birthday? Isaac, did he celebrate Isaac's birthday when he was born? Jacob, Moses, did King David, Solomon? What about Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, Paul, Timothy, Silas? Did any of them celebrate their birthdays? So again, if all scripture is written aforetime but written for our instruction, why are we doing something that is not scriptural? This is why we need to be very careful of what we are doing as so-called Christians and those who believe and say that they follow the Bible. Through trickery of word and deception and traditions made by men, the devil is at us, for it states in 1 Peter 5:8, the New International Version. Be alert and sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking for someone to devour. And when you look at 1 John 4:1, it says, Beloved, do not believe every inspired expression, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. So you have people, they teach this in church. Now, I just brought this to you. Now, I want you to look it up. And well, it's tradition. Okay, well, did God say, when you look at it in the manner that I just explained it, is it real? Are you actually worshiping a false God? Are you actually using idols and images, something that is completely against what the Most High says, your God says? The book that you say you follow, is it correct? Now, I want you to understand why we fall to this. Y'all can look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through 18. This is the King James Version. It says this, Finally, my brothers, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, because he coming with absolutely everything. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girded about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparations of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of spirit, which is the sword of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplications for all saints. Because guess what? Man, he out here and he trying to get us by any means necessary. Again, kamikaze was not created with the pilots in Japan over here in the United States when they bombed Pearl Harbor. Kamikaze was created in Revelations through Satan the devil. It says, man, I'm angry because he has a short period of time. I'm going to take as many people with me as I possibly can. And I'm going to mislead the masses any way that I possibly can. Which is why Jesus states in Matthew 24, verses 4 through 5, and this is the New International Version, it says, when he was questioned by scribes and the Pharisees and different people of that nature, he said, Jesus answered, watch out. This is answer coming from his apostles. Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I'm the Messiah, and will deceive many. Now I ask you to look at what has been presented. This is not from me. You see that I read scriptures from the Bible, and I told you terminologies where you can look at from the original Greek, the Hebrew, the Greek, the Latin, the Akkadian, and encyclopedias. Everything is here for you to go look up if you want to. But the thing is, you have to want to. So again, don't just go to church and believe everything that a preacher says to you. Actually look it up yourself. Study it. And if you have any questions, please feel free. And I'm going to direct you in your Bible. I'm going to direct you to encyclopedias and dictionaries and things of that nature so you can see that what you're talking about. Because I'm not him. I'm not a holy man. What I am is sincere about everything it is that I do, and I'm passionate. So I wish to assist and save all that I can. It'll be very much appreciated. Like it says in Ezekiel, a watchman is what I've made you. He says, so when you see someone doing something that's incorrect, you need to go tell them. Because if you don't tell them, I'm going to destroy them. This God's saying, warn them from me from doing the wrong thing. He says, so I'm going to destroy them for doing wrong if you don't tell them. But when it's that day and that time, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to add their blood back from your hands, which means what? I can't bring you back. So what does that mean? I die. Am I scared to die? No. But am I like, do I not want to displease my Heavenly Father? Yes. But he says, when you see someone doing something incorrect, he said, you go tell them. If they keep doing it, I'm going to destroy them. But you have saved yourself for telling what's real. And the thing is, if they change, you have also saved their life. So look, this is what it is. I know some people are not going to like this today, but it is what it is. Y'all take care. It's your boy, Mo Better. I love y'all. Agape. That's why I do what I do.